How do you maintain client trust and satisfaction in such a competitive industry? It's very important,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I always say that to build trust with clients and to maintain that relationship, you have to be 100% transparent with them. You know, as I think there's always that hesitancy when it comes to dealing with borrowers, and I've heard this a lot throughout my career is, you know, the mortgage broker doesn't really want to help me. They just wanted to make money off of me. They didn't really care about this. They didn't care about that, right? And, you know, brokers who were charging relatively high fees. Not all deals require a brokerage fee that a broker is going to be charging, right? So I think those are things you got to keep in mind is what value are they bringing to you, and are they teaching you anything, or are they just doing the business and treating you like a transaction? And I think when you're able to deal with a client who, let's say, is having a complex situation of bad credit or bad income situations, or they're behind on something, you know, being able to have a creative solution of different lending institutions that might be able to solve that for them, that's also very key. But also giving them some sort of compassion and empathy, right? I treat all my clients like if they were my own family. I don't treat them like a transaction.
Exactly what you do, yeah.
Exactly. You got to ask them. You got to go deep into those conversations, and they'll be open to it. That's how you gain that trust with them. So I think when you go out there with true honesty and being transparent about your services, about what you can do them, and if you can, you can. I have had times where I told a client, I just can't really help you on this one, right? And sometimes another broker can. So it just all depends. But that's okay, because you can't expect to know everything. You can't expect to have all the solutions for the clients, and you can't always expect to be the best of the best in the industry. Sometimes, you know,
but that's what I try for.
Yeah, exactly, right?
To be the best of the best.
We try to, right? And I think that's key. Is obviously we want to try, and that's you know, I think we all do our best that we can. But we always have to remember that any borrowers you deal with, there's a real human on that other side, right? And it's not just them getting a mortgage. It's, do they have families? Do they have young kids? You know, what's going on in their life? We don't necessarily know. Maybe they're going through a divorce or separation, right? And that tends to be a key thing in the mortgage industry, is that some people do get separated. And how does that impact their mortgage? And how can they take equity out? You have to have some empathy towards them when you're dealing with them at the end of the day, right?
One of the biggest challenges I have actually is, you know, when I'm breaking out the bad news to the client, I don't like it. And as much as I try to be transparent, but when I have to give them a bad news, I'm always like, yeah, it's very difficult for me.
It's very difficult. And I'm sure it's like less in the real estate side as more on the mortgage side, right?
On the real estate side, normally you don't have, it's all good news normally.
You're usually saying, yes, don't worry, we got you the deal. Mortgages, it's sometimes you have to explain the why of that no, right? And maybe it doesn't work out today, but let's work on a succession plan to maybe get you approved 6 months from now or 3 months from now. And I think that's where, as any mortgage broker, and I used to have a lot of mortgage brokers always say this to me, it was, why do I have to ask a client all these questions? Why do I feel like I'm asking them about their DNA, right? And I would tell them, I said, you're getting to know your client. This is supposed to be a forever client, right? Yeah. So if you know their kids are almost, finish high school or going to graduate from university, and they're telling you that, what if that's an opportunity for you to say, hey, what if your kids want a second home? Maybe you want to buy them a condo, right? So you got to look at it from all aspects as well. And maybe their kids want to get married. Maybe they might want to take equity out. That's why building a more interpersonal relationship with a client is so important. And it's just not a transaction.
Of course. What's the most rewarding part of your role as a principal mortgage broker at Integrity Tree Financial?
That's a good question. What is the most important thing about being a principal broker? Honestly, there's so many good things about it. I would say, obviously, number one, the one thing I hate is obviously the administrative side of things. But you know what? You got to do what you got to do.
Nobody likes that.
Nobody likes that.
But you're actually very good at it.
Yeah. You can be great at it, but doesn't necessarily mean you have to like it, right? I think there's also, when we look at, for a principal broker, I love leading a team, right? I love the coaching aspect, the mentoring aspect, seeing the growth of the agents when they either came from no experience whatsoever and just seeing how far they can grow. And I think I've always said this to you, right? Like for me, I will always keep it 100 with you. I'll always be honest and transparent with you. Sometimes, yeah, I can come up more aggressive, but it's sometimes for me, it's like, you're not my employee. Yes, you're part of my brokerage and you're one of our agents, but we are going to treat you like if you were a business owner, because when you decide,
and that's what it is.
Exactly, as an entrepreneur, you have to deal with, the hard hits and deal with the consequences and the tough times. And sometimes I need to be tough on the agents to motivate them to do more, right? Because everything is fine and dandy and it's just all purple roses and pink and all that, then you're never going to be able to really help that person improve. Now, some leaders may disagree with me, and that's okay, but everybody has a different type of leading way of leading, right? I like to lead with authenticity, being myself. The people that I have on the team, I want them to work with me because they like me for who I am. I shouldn't have to feel like I necessarily have to change to be somebody that I'm not necessarily being, right? And I think by projecting that and putting that out there, that's probably why we have the team that we have, right? But I will always try to help everybody the best that I can. Intentions are always good. Look, we all have bad days, and that's just part of being a leader. Leaders are also allowed to have bad days, not just the staff and the people that we work with, right?
Definitely. Now, can you share a memorable success story?
A memorable success story for a client or for within the business?
Within the business, the memorable success story that you've had in the past 20 years, I guess.
Okay, well, there's been many. Why don't we start this? Why don't we talk about a great success story with clients, right? I think the biggest success you can find in a client is when they are being told no, either by the big banks or they're being told no by other mortgage brokers who maybe don't have that much experience, and then you come in and you're saving the day for them, right? You and I we've seen that. We've had that experience, right? Somebody will say we can't, and then all of a sudden we get it done. Now, I can't do everything. I can't be, the mortgage guru and fix all the solutions. But I think that's the rewarding part when you're dealing with clients, is fixing those complex issues and then turning into something good, because it could, one, maybe they are that first time home buyer and the amount of relief that they would have. Or if a client was about to go into a foreclosure or a bankruptcy or a power sale, those ones can always be rewarding, but it's such an emotional ride, because you can only imagine you're trying to keep calm for them when you know that there's a potential risk of this client losing their home. Maybe because they were behind on payments, or, they couldn't renew their mortgage on time, whatever it is, or, coming from a private lending standpoint, because a lot of private lenders today are not wanting to renew clients' mortgages, right? Because their investors want their return of investment. I think from a business standpoint, for me, throughout my 20 years almost doing this, I would say the big success is probably becoming a principal broker, right? I've had a massive journey starting my career as in the brokerage side, and I was 18 years old, right? And to now see going from there to experiencing the lending side, having to survive 2 acquisitions throughout economy, credit crisis, the recession that happened, all the regulatory changes, to leaving a company that I was working for over a decade, then now, going to different brokerages and then being part of Integrity Financial. I think, what me and Asif have, my other business partner, Integrity, is something that is unique. Right. And I think that's hard to find when 2 people can be truly authentic, but really respect each other for who they are and really have the same vision and the goals. And for me, it was either I was going to start this from scratch when I had left the corporate side, and going back to the whole relationship thing, right? You look back, and once you've established enough time in this industry, you start to understand, okay, there's value in all these relationships. And Asif and I knew each other from the past, right?
How did you get to know each other?
So I used to be his business development manager for his entire brokerage. I used to work for another lending institution. I was a BDM. I was at the top. MCAP, yeah. MCAP. I was at the top of my game. I was, winning awards, accolations, all that stuff. But honestly, that stuff, it matters, but it doesn't matter, right? I think at the end of the day, for me, it was validating certain parts of my career to say, hey, you know what? I'm doing something great. People respect me and all that, but it wasn't easy, right? To be 18-year-old kid and being like one of the young people in this industry while you're trying to grow, people don't take you as seriously at the beginning. Everybody thinks you're a bit of a joke. And they're like, this guy, he has a lot more to learn. Well, now it's a bit different because now I'm teaching other people, right? And I'm leading other people, but that takes time to build that reputation. And reputation does mean a lot to me. On how I deliver myself.
Everything pretty much in this business. I mean,
it does mean a lot of things. But now when you do build that reputation, you get more comfortable being yourself, right? And I wasn't really comfortable being myself. Probably, if you maybe met me, I would say 7 years ago, probably not as comfortable. It took some time, right? It took some time because there's this mindset in your head that's saying, am I good enough to move to the next stage in my life or my career? And if I'm not, you have to sometimes give yourself an ego check. Okay, why am I not where I need to be? So there's a lot of things, right? But I think for me, just the biggest accomplishment and biggest thing about being a principal broker is really leading the team. And yeah,
do you ever miss going back to the corporate world? Or
oh, no. I don't foresee myself ever going back working for somebody. Knock on wood, who knows, right? Maybe that might be a retirement plan. But as of right now, where I think things stand is the scalability of the business. One, focus on the team. The team, obviously, growing that and growing the business. And how do we scale? And do we scale in other provinces? Whether we now go into BC market or other ones, do we need to? And that takes time,
What do you think one of the reasons is for some people who stay in the corporate world in this industry as opposed to having their own business and, working as a independent contractor?
I think people can become comfortable, right? Now, you got to keep in mind that not everybody is meant to become an entrepreneur or, open up their own business, right? Everybody has potential to do something if they really want to and put their mind to it. But the question is like, are they risk takers? Are they willing to actually know that, hey, you know what, you're in it by yourself at first, right? You got to build things, you got to grow, you got to determine if there's a proof of concept of a business, if there's a market for it, right? I would say that, people get comfortable with it. I was one of those people. I coming from Calgary to Toronto, I had told myself that, I would probably stay in the corporate side for maybe another 2 years. I end up staying on for like another 5 years because I was comfortable. I was comfortable with the
You don't want to get out of that comfort zone, right?
Comfortable with the income, comfortable with expenses. And I knew that I think it was a validation. Because my career was, everything was getting much greater and, you're becoming more successful in that field or that line of work that you're doing. You're like, okay, why do I want to leave? I'm at the top of my game, and, I was one of the top national BDMs in Canada. And that to me was like, okay, this is great. I could do my own job with my eyes closed. But then I started feeling I was becoming complacent. And I was like, I can do this. I'm not learning anything anymore. I needed more of a challenge. And then I had to reflect back on why did I move to Toronto? Right. I had moved because I said I'm going to become a mortgage broker at one point. Right now, just build a network, build relationships. And then that's where things happened. And then back in it was 2022 when I had left to the broker side, but obviously had experienced 2 different brokerages before joining into Integrity Tree.
Financial. That's interesting. In the corporate world, I think it's more like they're giving you a sort of drug, so they numb you down. But you never, it makes you numb, it makes you feel good, but you can never grow or move out of it, pretty much.
You can grow in different ways, but it's tougher to grow because you have so much competition, right? I think there's a difference if like you're trying to grow in the corporate world. You are having more competition depending on the scalability of the scale and size of the company. But I think as long as you have a great support system, one thing I will always say, I always had a lot of great mentors and coaches that really taught me along the way. I was a really shy person when I first got into the industry, didn't really talk to anybody, but I had all these ideas, right? So it takes some time to get comfortable. Once you get more comfortable, then and you start proving to people at that time, because you're young, you're trying to prove to everybody that, hey, you're the best thing ever, you're going to learn, you're going to get this, and no, it doesn't matter what anybody says, you're just going to keep on going. I think once you get to that comfort level, you're like, I don't need to prove anything to anybody anymore. I'm comfortable with who I am and what I want to be and all of that, right? And I think, all the validations through other people, the accolades, those are great, but it doesn't represent who I truly am. And the only person who's ever going to really know who I truly am and how happy I am is myself, right? My team might have an idea, but they see me as this, okay, here's the guy that's full of knowledge and he's going to teach us this and that, but there's also a real human being also if you break all those barriers down, right? But I think as a principal broker, you have to be tough for everybody. You got to lead with good intentions, and you got to always, try to love everybody, whether it's tough love or not. Yeah.
Okay, so what advice would you give to someone who's about to start their first home purchase, like a first-time home buyer?
Speak to a mortgage broker. That's the best thing you can do. Don't
mortgage
start
pre-approval.
Yeah, but speak to a mortgage broker. The reasons why I'll say this is don't just go and start speaking to a realtor, and then you're wasting the realtor's time. Because if you don't know what you don't qualify, you don't know what you qualify for. That's a challenge. A mortgage broker is supposed to, they can do two things. There's a pre-qualification, which is running your numbers simply, and then letting you know, okay, this is what you might be able to qualify for. And then you have a pre-approval. Now, there's always a misconception about pre-approvals. Everybody thinks because once you have a pre-approval, it's a firm deal. It's not, right? Because if anything changes throughout that time frame, whether it's your income or your credit changes, they can pull another credit check on you and they can kind of determine whether, do those ratios still work? So that's one thing. The other thing I always tell individuals when they're getting a pre-approvals is simply just a rate hold, because if you go out there and you buy a property that doesn't meet the lender's requirements, that pre-approval becomes null and void with that specific lender. And I've seen this happen a lot of times. Sometimes, a client gets a pre-approval, they end up buying a heritage home. Those are difficult to qualify for, right? Or the property has
to do everything.
Exactly. Or a property has knob and tube wiring. Most lending institutions are going to say, no, we want that fixed before anything. So that's why it's important to collaborate with your also realtor. Even if you're a mortgage broker or a client, get them all three working together. And what I've always done is I've always told the borrower, if you're going to work with your realtor, connect them with me. But whenever they're showing you a property, or if there's properties that you're interested in, send me that MLS listing, because I'll be able to take a look at that MLS listing and saying, we might come across some issues. What is this man handyman special, right? That's usually a red flags. There's all these little red flags that lenders look at, right? Or I'll say fixer upper, right? Or I'll say sold as is condition. These are all little red flags that lenders look at and say, what do you mean by as is condition? Is there issues with the property that we need to be aware about? So those are things you got to be careful about, because if you're required to get an appraisal report, and not in all cases, sometimes lenders want that appraisal report. If there's any deficiencies, that can kill your entire application.
So you mean like those who buy like fixer uppers to renovate it and sell it, they should be very concerned about financing aspect of it.
Yeah, so right? I think the flipping the property or buying investors, typically what investors do when they're buying a property that's really run down or below average rating, they know that these A lenders and B lenders won't touch those deals, right? Unless you're getting some sort of construction mortgage, and typically some will go the private lending route. What they'll do is get a short-term loan through a private lender, right? A construction mortgage, and then or through a big bank, they'll get a construction mortgage. And then what they'll do is once the constructions have been 100% complete, they'll go back and refinance the property afterwards, because now you're increasing the value, right? But from an initial standpoint, just to buy it, you're going to have a very difficult time getting that approved. So I always say, look for a decent home. Yes, you can do certain renovations on it. There's also programs such as like a purchase plus improvements program. If you're working with a realtor, you even if for a client, you can look at making improvements up to, sometimes 40% of whatever the value of the property is, sometimes even higher, where, you can complete, say you have this perfect home that you're looking for, almost perfect home, but you really hate the kitchen. You want to change cabinets, maybe you want a new sink, some new electrical, some things happening, like some minor improvements that will still add value. You could collaborate with a mortgage broker getting you into a program like that. You have to cover the cost of it, but then you'll get reimbursed that cost afterwards. It gets added onto your mortgage. And that's like a program that is underutilized in this market, underutilized.
What is it called?
Purchase Plus Improvements.
Purchase Plus Improvements.
It's underutilized because, one, there's not a lot of people who promote it or understand it. Second, it requires also a realtor to be in the know of that, understanding, say, hey, you know what? You told me that you like everything about this home, but you really hate the kitchen. Talk to my mortgage broker. Ask them about the Purchase Plus Improvements program, right? And then we'll break it down for them. We'll say, okay, get us a quote of what you think what's going to cost you for,
So basically, it works based on the fact that you will add to the equity of the home, and then you take that equity out.
Yeah. So let's say, for example, you're buying for $500,000, right? You might be able to say you need $20,000 or $25,000 to do renovations. We add that $25,000 to the purchase price, but then they pay the down payment based on, say it's 5% down payment, right? They're going to pay 5% on that $525 rather than $500. But they have 90 days to typically 120 days to complete those renovations. They get an appraisal done. If the appraisal shows that everything was done in a good working manner, then afterwards you send it back to the lender. The lender then will say, okay, you paid for that $25,000. Here's your $25,000 back.